This one trick saves me hours every week, and I almost never see anyone else do it. Here's what happens. You ask AI for something, the first output is wrong. You go back and forth 5 or 6 times, and finally you get something good. And then you just move on. That's the mistake. Because right there in that conversation is a free lesson on why AI failed you. I'll show you how to find it, plus 3 situations where this matters most. Let's get into it. Now, this is the trap that I see people fall into time and time again. Imagine this bubble here, the first one, is associated to the first prompt that we give an AI. So we're asking it to do something or create something for us. It gives us an output. And when it first gives us an output, we're dissatisfied with what it gave us. Either it's incorrect in the direction it took the wrong task, it didn't complete the task, or whatever else. We're upset with the output. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to iterate on that conversation over and over and over, which is fine and is what you should do. And at the very end of these iterations, you finally get an output that you're probably impressed by. Either it achieved the task you wanted it to, or it created something that was compelling and impressed you. But at this moment is where everybody fails. And this is where the flaw arises, where after they've gotten their output, they just move on. And that's the issue. What we need to do in this moment is we need to reflect on that conversation and figure out exactly where we failed to begin with and why the AI didn't give us the output we wanted initially. And the root cause of this problem is almost always prompting altitude, which simply means how high or low is your prompt when it comes to specificity? How specific are you being? Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, most people spend their time here in high altitude prompting, where they're being extremely vague with their prompts, which likely is going to take the AI in the wrong direction. But where we want to spend most of our time in reality to get better outputs would be in the Goldilocks zone, where we're being just specific enough to get a high quality output. And then from time to time, it's okay to be hyper specific with a prompt, but sometimes this can backfire on us. So if maybe we're doing something in relation to design or having the AI brainstorm with us or research something, it may have a better idea of what we should do that we don't necessarily know ourselves because it has a broader knowledge base of what's possible in that area. So we need to be careful with being too specific as well, because this can backfire too. So we want to spend most of our time in the Goldilocks zone of being just specific enough to allow the AI to go in the right direction. Quick pause in your regular programming. This video is brought to you by me. So, 2 quick things. First off, below is a 30-day AI Insight series, completely free. You'll get 30 emails in your inbox of how you can apply AI to your business and your work. The second thing is if you'd like to work with me, below are a series of offerings to see if there's a good fit between the two of us. With that being said, let's get back into the video. And the way that we can develop our understanding of what just right is by closing that loop that I mentioned. And remember how this flow goes. We first give the AI a prompt. It then gives us a bad output that we're not satisfied with. So what we're going to do is we're going to refine on that prompt and iterate with the AI in the same conversation thread. It finally gives us an output that we're satisfied with because it either achieved a task or impressed us with the quality of its response. And then to succeed with avoiding this trap is we're going to close the loop. So we're going to reflect on that conversation and we're going to review what specifically we missed. And often what's missed is 2 primary things that I see with my clients. The first thing is either misdirection, and this usually comes down to word usage because right now with AI, prompts are extremely critical. The words you choose matter because that's what's going to direct the AI either in the right direction or the wrong direction. So we need to be careful on what we're saying and we're not pointing the AI in the wrong direction accidentally. In addition to misdirection, the second thing I often see with my clients is lack of context. So they're not giving enough information to the AI for it to know exactly what to do or how to complete a task. They've either forgotten to share it with the AI or they likely assume the AI has this somehow in its head. So these are the 2 things that are likely going wrong with that conversation when you reflect back on it. And once you've done that reflection, there's going to be 2 primary benefits you get from this. The first is you can then, that task that you were successful with eventually after 5 or 6 iterations, you can take those lessons that you learned after the review and you can bake that into a new prompt. So you can rewrite your initial prompt at the beginning with that enriched context and better direction. And once you've done that, you then can bake this in or save it as a GPT project or Claude project. So anytime that same task comes up again, all you have to do is give the AI a simple input, probably a transcript for a meeting or whatever else, and it's automatically going to respond in the way that aligns with what you think good is and how you define good for that specific task. So this is the first benefit. I would say the second and more important benefit is your ability to build the muscle on how to be more clear over time. And there's different ways to label this skill or muscle. I've labeled it as AI intuition, but you could simply call it the ability to be clear. Because the more you close the loop and the more you review previous conversations, you start to see patterns. And these patterns you start to see are not only inside of your prompts, but other people's prompts as well. And you can then adapt those learnings from figuring out where you misdirected the AI in this task or where you lacked context in this task and apply that to other tasks. So you're basically adapting those skills to other situations and benefiting from the muscle you're building over time, which is being more clear and also having higher AI intuition. And these are the direct benefits. But what are the midterm to long term benefits of actually building that skill, that AI intuition of being clear? And it really comes down to economic value. When I work with clients, oftentimes we start with basic tasks that they're automating with AI. And usually for this, the clarity can be kind of broad in general. And that's because the task itself is very simple. Simple tasks sometimes equate to low economic value. That's not always the case, but sometimes. And as they build their ability to be more clear and have higher AI intuition of knowing what the AI needs and not misdirecting it, we start to move beyond basic tasks into more complex tasks. And more complex tasks with AI, they need clarity. You need to be more clear on what you need. You need to provide the right context. But if done correctly, you can often in one or two shots have the AI achieve a complex task, which equates to higher economic value for your business and your job. And finally, after all of this stuff, like I mentioned previously, you can take those lessons you've learned from the conversation and you can bake them into GPT projects and or Claude projects, and you can on a recurring basis reap the benefits of putting in the work ahead of time because you have a clear prompt that's both clear in the context as well as which direction the AI should take. And this is where you start to truly automate work and tasks. And now that we understand the problem, the trap, and the solution, I want to walk you through some really concrete examples so you can see this in action. So I sat down for like 5 minutes thinking about all the times that I've seen my clients run into this situation. And just in 5 minutes, I came up with 27 examples. So instead of walking you through all 27 examples, I've distilled this down to 3 common examples that I'm sure every single one of you are doing right now. And the patterns we can take from these examples can be applied to almost any other example. So let's start with the first one, which is using AI to expedite the process of writing meeting notes. And we'll start with a bad prompt. So this is a common prompt that I'll see people use for summarizing a meeting. So they'll drop in a transcript for a meeting and they'll simply say, summarize a meeting for me from the transcript and list out the action items. There's a lot of reasons of why this is wrong and bad, and we'll just focus on the areas that are relevant to closing the loop. So first, what's missing from this? Well, from that prompt, we're not clear on who owns what decisions, or at least we're not asking the AI to figure out who that is based off the transcript. And the next part is we're not being clear on what projects have priority. And if we're not clear on that, the AI might just try to figure out what the priorities are and may be incorrect. So we want to be clear on this. After that, another thing that I've seen run into with AI is it may mix up what a random idea is versus a commitment. So if I give you a random idea in a brainstorming session, the AI may interpret that as a commitment from that person to do that task. So we need to be clear on what's a commitment to take an action versus just a random idea during a brainstorming session. And then finally, we want to understand what action items truly mean because the AI may define what an action is different from what I define an action is. So I need to be clear on what an action item actually is in my mind and what passes the threshold of something that we should note down in our notes. So that's what's missing from the first prompt. Now let's look at what's reusable from this, the meta lesson we can take that we can apply to other tasks. So we can build that intuition of being more clear in future prompts. Now for basically any type of meeting summary, there's a few things we want to be clear on. We first want to state who owns what decision, or at least ask the AI to infer it from the transcript. The next thing is we need to be clear on what the priorities are for projects if we're discussing projects. And then finally, another thing we need to do is we need to be clear on what counts as real commitment versus just a random idea from a brainstorming session. These are some meta lessons we can take from this process and apply to future iterations of different ways that we can have AI summarize meetings. That's our first example. So our next example is data analysis. And I'm sure there's tons of you out there that you're dropping data into ChatGPT or Claude and trying to have it assess that data and give you insights from it. And here's just an example prompt for a sample data set. So imagine that we have a prompt where we're asking the AI to analyze our sales data and tell us what's happening. This is a basic prompt that we're giving the AI. There's a lot wrong with this again. And this is just a variation of different types of things I've seen clients do or other people do when it comes to asking AI to assess their data. And often what you're going to get back from AI is going to be extremely obvious, something that you could easily see yourself without having to ask AI, such as sales increased by 12% in Q3. This provides you almost zero help. Now, what's missing from this prompt and why is it wrong? Well, the first thing is you weren't clear on the question that you wanted to ask. You just generally said, hey, tell me what's happening. It's good to be clear on what you want to get from the data. And maybe if you don't know the answer to this question or you're not really sure what question you need to ask, you can at least state the decision you're trying to make from the data set. So you give AI data and say, hey, I need to make these types of decisions from this data. Can you pull insights out from it that can help me make that decision? Ideally, you have both of these, but if you can't get this one, at least do this one. And then the other two areas that are missing is oftentimes it's good in your prompt to state what the target is. So if you're talking about sales data in this context, there's probably a quota or some sort of benchmark you want to set for that quarter that you're trying to get to. You need to be clear with AI on what that is. And this other point here is actually tightly coupled with that point that I just mentioned, where we're just reinstating what good looks like to the AI so it knows what the boundaries are of what we're trying to achieve with our business. So that's what's missing from the prompt. What are the lessons that we can reuse to other tasks? Building that skill of clarity. So the first one can be applied to almost most tasks that you give to AI is being very specific on the question you want to ask the AI. What do you want from it? Be clear on that. And next is another one that we can use for almost all tasks, which is being clear on the benchmarks and targets associated to a task. Saying that these are the boundaries, this is what good looks like, this is what we're trying to achieve, helping the AI know so it can then assess the data in line with that benchmark. And finally, I'd say probably the most important lesson here from this example is the importance of actually sharing what you're going to do with that data after you've gotten the insights, aka sharing what decision you need to make. Because if you're clear with the AI on your intent after it gives you the insights, which is you trying to make a decision from the insight, it's going to figure out the rest for you. So always remember to share your intent. And in this case, that's just saying we need to make a decision from the data set or the insights you provided from it. And that's our second example, data analysis. Now onto the third one, which is brainstorming. Again, this is something that a lot of people do with AI, and there's a lot of flaws in the way they initially prompt. So this is an initial prompt that I often see people use where they're saying, hey, give me an idea for X topic. So in this case, we're saying, give me an idea for generating more leads for my business. There's a lot of assumptions baked into this prompt, assuming the AI knows a lot about your business when it often doesn't. And when we prompt like this, we're likely going to get results that are very basic and generic and that aren't really useful for us. So some examples we could see are run ads, start a podcast, post on LinkedIn. All these things are things we've heard before. It's not relevant and specific to our situation. So what's missing from this prompt is specificity. Ideally, in this prompt, we need to share what we've already tried for generating more leads. And also we need to talk about what budget we have for this process inside of our business, as well as the capacity of our team and the skill sets of our team. Another great thing to include is who's your ideal customer? Who are you serving? Because that'll dictate the type of lead generation you do because you need to go where they are. And finally, if you do have a track record of anything that has worked in the past when it comes to generating leads, you need to call that out for the AI so it can then give you either variations of that or different ways you can improve it even further. So there's a lot about the business that's missing from that first prompt. And some of the meta lessons that we can take from this and apply to future tasks that are related or adjacent to this are first being clear on what's ruled out, meaning that if there's certain things that you don't want to do because you either don't have the capacity or budget to do it, call that out in your prompt. Another really important one is talking about who you're reaching out to. Who's your customer? Where do they spend their time? And if you don't know where they spend their time, at least give the AI an understanding of who your customer is. It'll figure out where they spend their time based off of research. And then finally, if you've done anything in the past, share those success patterns with the AI so it knows what's worked to either give you alternative ideas and or ideas that are related to that to see if those work even better. So the meta here on brainstorming is ensuring that you give as much clarity as possible to what you've done, what you're trying to achieve, who you're serving, etc. So those are 3 distilled down examples from 27 that I mentioned previously that are applicable to most of you. Now, the primary takeaway for you here is this action plan, the 4-step action plan I want to share with you of closing the loop. So the first step, as always, is spotting the pattern. After you've iterated with the AI and you finally got the output that you wanted, you need to review the conversation and figure out exactly where you fell short. And where you fell short is going to likely manifest in 2 ways. Either you misdirected the AI by word usage in your first prompt, because remember, words matter with prompts today because AI follows those prompts very effectively. And then the second thing is you probably were lacking context. You didn't share enough information with the AI when you first gave it your first prompt. And then after we figured out exactly where the gap was, we need to then go to the next step, which is saving our learnings either in a GPT project or a Claude project for any task that's on a recurring basis. So if this is something that you're going to do over and over and over on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis, you should put that in a GPT project or Claude project with that improved system prompt that you've created after you've reviewed the conversation. So you can save yourself time on future iterations of working with AI to get higher quality outputs. And then finally, through this entire process, you're building that AI intuition that I mentioned, and you're building your ability to be more clear with AI. So going forward, when you interact with AI again for adjacent tasks or unrelated tasks to the one that you've reviewed in the past, you start to see patterns and you realize where you're not being clear or you're lacking context, which in turn allows you to achieve more and more complex tasks with AI because you're able to be more clear, more specific, and push AI to the edge to get more economic value from it in your job and your business. And that's it. So if you enjoyed this, reshare it with your friends. And as always, 2 things. First off, below is a 30-day AI Insight series, completely free. You'll get 30 insights in your inbox of how you can apply AI to your business and your work. The second thing is if you'd like to work with me, below are a series of offerings to see if there's a good fit between the 2 of us. And now if you want to see what happens when you actually nail this, I made a video where I used these exact ideas to fully replace my graphic designer with AI. It's better quality, way cheaper, and I'll show you the whole process live. It's right here. Go ahead, click it. I'll see you next time, Internet.